Well, hello there and welcome to the living room of the Dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Hugh Stelfers for February 25th, the day of the Highter Cause. That's right, and here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of the Highter Cause. We have us a more interesting one. We haven't had an interesting one in a couple days. Well, we have, but this one's pretty crazy. What is it? Boom, it's an old-timey squeeze type bike horn, I would say, and what looks to be well, what is it? A pork pie, I'm guessing. Now, it's either a really tiny pork pie at a regular-sized horn or a giant horn and a regular-sized pork pie. Does that speak to the day of Highter Cause? I don't know, not on its face, I wouldn't say. But sometimes these things don't necessarily make all that much sense. In any event, visual representational image aside, it's not altogether all too important. I just like folks to kind of see what I have on the page here in front of me, so you can kind of be part of the paradigm going on off camera. But what is important is it's February 25th, and hence it must be somebody's birthday. So if your birthday is February 25th, what's important around here? Wishing you a happy birthday. All right, so happy birthday. But if this video finds you late, I don't know, days, weeks, months, whatever the case may happen to be, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday in that instance. But for everybody else joining us randomly, or more ideally here to celebrate the birthday also, well, hey, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right, this is the DykASSt or birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake, but I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled a 3 and a 1 for a 4. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be will oftentimes put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But oftentimes we go through this life, we are very singular or narrow of focus. A lot of times we got the blinders on to what's going on around us. We kind of need to get those blinders off in order to recognize the things the universe might be putting in front of our path there. And we may see things, but we may not lend them much credence. So this is a little bit of an exercise, if you like, to help you get those blinders off and start noticing the things that the universe is putting down on our path. But we need something that we can't help but recognize, something that's mutually agreed upon us and the universe. That's right, your daily numbers. So now you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you get your own set of dice so you can ascribe directional values to number sets and time limits with which to go in those directions, if this is something that you want to try exercising. So if it is, get yourself a pair of dice and pick out a spot that's, I don't know, near and dear to your heart, or perhaps someplace you haven't necessarily explored before, and set out. All right, I often like to say the town square, but let's shake things up and go to Main Street. All right, say you stop off, you start from a little park perhaps, and if you do, like I said, get those blinders off. All right, you never know, the day might start to take on a little bit of a theme. Let's take the bike horn and the tiny pork pie, if you like. All right, you might start to see such things presenting into your world as you get on through this expedition here, if you like. Maybe you just start seeing people wearing all sorts of different kinds of hats. All right, I know that sounds a little bit, I don't know, natural, but you know what, it might be something that really stands out. Who's to say? Also, you might just start seeing bikes with the horns on there. You might start hearing them. I don't know, the whole honky honky, the clown horn type stuff. I don't hear that kind of thing in my everyday life all that often, but hey, you never know. So that's just the visual representational image. It could be just about anything, so you got to stay eagle-eyed out there. All right, that said, you get after your first directional value time limit. Hey, maybe you're not seeing much of anything at all right, but don't get dissuaded. At least you're out there getting your steps in. Just take a moment to stop, pause, look around your environment, and maybe you just so happen to notice something small. An example I often like to bring up, maybe you so happen to notice you're on 3rd Street, or 4th Street rather, if you're adding in the dice numbers there. 4th and Main, all right? Hey, I would take that as a sign you're on the right path, all right? So roll yourself another time value. Hey, maybe this time it tells you to, or a directional value time limit tells you to go down 4th Street. Well, hey, there you go. Another 4 minutes if you like. Maybe at the end of this particular time value and directional value, you find yourself in front of a building with a 4 in the address. Well, there you go, another sign. Perhaps maybe go inside, see what you see. Maybe it just so happens to be a bike shop. Well, there you go. You might just happen to see a wall full of horns. I don't know. Old-timey, new-timey, whatever the case may happen to be. Maybe the individual behind the desk working on some kind of old-fashioned bike asks you what you're doing, what they can help you with. Hey, just be open, transparent, and honest with what you're doing. I'm not in the market for a bike today. I'm just rolling my dice, seeing what kind of synchronicity lines up for me, what kind of coincidences the universe might be dropping in my path. You're going to sound a little bit harebrained. I know, I get it, but that's what's interesting about this. Person's apt to say, what are you even talking about? Show them your dice, maybe show them this video, and they'll probably come back with, that's just crazy. I'm like, yeah, I know, but hey, the onus is on me right here, all right? So just throw it on me, all right? You're out here just trying to shake things up. And they might actually surprise you. They might tell you, that's crazy too, but what's even crazier, it's their birthday too. That's right. That's just the kind of thing that might just so happen to happen, all right? Strange things and all right? But what's also nice, hey, maybe nobody else is in the market for bicycles. Maybe they own the shop. They might just be apt to close it down and join you on the journey, all right? And what's great about that is the more minds, the more people who are focused on begetting the same kinds of results, your universal influences, if you like, hey, you're apt to beget greater results, all right? So get out there, focus on your numbers, all right? Be open to things happening and stay eagle-eyed. Like I said, you never know what might present. And if you happen to see, taste, touch, smell any kind of coincidences that stack up, hey, I think you're apt to see why I brought it up. All right. That having been said, synchronicity in the can there, I think you get the idea. Let's move on to your birthday read. That's why you're here. All right. Your month is February. Your day, the 25th. Your sign is 5 to 7 degrees Pisces of the Pisces I period specifically. And your quality and element is mutable water. All right. February 25th, the day of the Higher Cause. Although those born on February 25 are often formidable individuals in their own right, they only reach their full potential when giving their all for a cause greater than themselves. And those born on this day have a large measure of confidence and self-respect, but generally believe the universal goals have greater meaning than personal ones. Also, they intuit that by plugging into a higher cause, their own power is only magnified. Not infrequently, February 25 people come into conflict with those around them. And that they are critical of social mores is not surprising, since they see society as being in constant flux and turmoil, perhaps unworthy of a deep commitment. And as children, February 25 people often rebel quite openly against their parents and other authority figures, and react emotionally to what they perceive to be injustice. And because they often do not find peace with themselves until later life, their adolescence and early adulthood, can be stormy. In their late 30s and 40s, February 25 people usually deepen their commitment to a worthy interest, perhaps art, philosophy, religion, or an ideal of what humanity could be at its very best. And once an interest of this kind takes hold of them, they will devote even ever-increasing time and effort to it, publicly, privately, even both. However, it is usually a happier state of affairs when they do not radically depart from their pre-existing life, but build on it in a healthy, organic way. And those born on this day have no time for meanness or pettiness of any sort. They may even evince a regal bearing themselves and do things with a grand gesture, yet rarely adopt a condescending or elitist attitude. And the most successful of February 25 people are thus able to communicate their high ideals and sense of purpose to others. And the less highly evolved of this day may fail to convince others of their sincerity and therefore be perceived as proselytizing or claiming types. Proselytizing meaning to convert them to a religion. The success and indeed happiness of February 25 people is often in direct proportion to their ability to communicate without arousing antagonism. And in the worst cases, they may come to feel self-pity and frustration through being misunderstood. Giving is generally more important for February 25 people than receiving, but they must be sensitive to the fact that those on whom they bestow their gifts may be less than eager to receive them. And in such cases, those born in the state only prime themselves for feelings of rejection. Instead, toughening their stance and adopting a more no-nonsense attitude based on mutual exchange may be a more suitable approach for them, and ultimately a healthier way of relating to others. Well, all right, this was a somewhat rather well-rounded birthday reading. I'd say that because a lot of the cases here since back to the Capricorn period, they were very laser focused. Sometimes they would just kind of go down the track of what the theme was and expand out from there, which usually would only be relegated to one specific number a day. And since out past Capricorn, again, these readings were very hyper-focused. Here it was still a little bit narrow focused, but they really rounded it out, talked about your childhood, just aspects of your life past certain ages and such, and a lot of times they don't even do that, even though that seems pretty common sense. That having been said, I might be getting ahead of myself. I'd like to provide a little bit of a commentary on the things we've gone over, perhaps maybe even draw through lines to the period in general, things that I found of interest, that kind of sort of thing. So let's get into it, all right? February 25th, the day of the Higher Cause. All right. You're formidable forces in your own right. And the reading claims only when you give yourself to a greater good will you be able to evolve into your final form. All right. That said, you have both self-confidence and self-respect, but an idealized concern for higher objectives, which is said to hold more value for you over personal concerns. And to this end, the reading claims you may be of the mindset, once you're able to get started with your cause, that your power will only be further heightened. All right. By and large, this commitment to a cause has been an on-again, off-again through line since the Capricorn period. Yesterday, in particular, dealt with a lot of these same said themes. One of the chief differences, however, is this coming into conflict dynamic, which is said to be realized as seeing society in constant flux, rebelling against parents in your adolescence, reacting emotionally to injustice, etc. That didn't really present yesterday, even though they too were hyper-consumed with a higher call to a cause. With that said, the reading claims in middle age you're apt to gravitate toward an interest that captivates your focus. And the reading recommends that not deviating too far from your pre-existing life, however. That is, if happiness is something that you wish to maintain. And what's interesting here is in a lot of these cases with these days that deal with high ideals, happiness isn't something that they necessarily care about because their life is that dedicated to the cause. So it's good that they brought that up, I would say. I'm guessing too much of a swing you may chance, with that much of a swing, you may chance some kind of self-destruction. That's been another through line here for this particular period. It just keeps coming up, self-destruction. They risk self-destruction, so maybe mind that. So, like I said, as consistent a through line as that has been in this period. Or like yesterday, the day of sacrifice, you may go hard 100 into that cause and at the expense of all else. All right. No telling, they don't contextualize that too much there, but I would say that's one chief reason. That said, you're purported to have no time for mean or petty people. You possess a royal kind of air and a regal bearing, with grand gestures, they said, but you may do so without being pompous or elitists. And that's a novel inclusion, because I don't think I've ever come across that kind of thing before. There's been a couple days where people strive to find themselves in that kind of group, that higher socialized tier. But there's no mention of that here. It's just kind of like an air that you exude, which is interesting. But say, what else do you have here? To this end, the reading claims communication of your high ideals is a key component to not only your success, but also your happiness. And as antagonisms, self-pity, frustration, and misunderstanding can arise from simply being misunderstood. Very interesting inclusion, I would say. Let's say a decent recommendation for anyone to that end, I would argue. This final note with regard to giving and being mindful of the fact that some folks may be less than eager to receive gifts is also a very interesting and fascinating entry, I would say. It's not something that the book has ever examined before, at least as far as I can recall. And as someone whose primary love language was gift giving, and I say was because it's kind of changed. I say that because I experienced no uncertain amount of rejection myself with regard to how those gifts were received, if they were even received. Sometimes they weren't. Once somebody found out I got them a gift, they didn't want it. They didn't even know what it was. So I can't help but thinking coming across this consideration may have helped me had it been something I came across in the past. So if this does ring true for you, hey, maybe this is just the kind of wake-up call. You're like, man, I do get a lot of rejected gifts. You know what? Maybe consider ditching it altogether. I don't know, but it's just something to consider. Certainly interesting, of all things, to come up in the birthday breakdown. That having been said, that's what I had to say about the breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. Let me get the book back centered here for you. Those born on the 25th day of the month are ruled by the number 7, as 2 plus 5 equals 7, and by the planet Neptune, whose province is mystical and religious states. And such metaphysical influences are magnified by February 25 people, since their sign Pisces is also ruled by Neptune. And number 7 people generally enjoy change and travel, but since the number 25 has associations with danger, those born on February 25 must be vigilant in order to avoid accidents. All right, very interesting. They put a little bit of numerology into it for you here. It is a book about numerology in some cases, but they don't really dive into it all that much. That said, let's dive back into the notes here, see what I had to say about it. Number 7 and the watery planet Neptune, even though I think it's a gas giant, but here nor there, which rules dreams, visions, and fantasies, and is said to allow those falling under its influence traits of irresistible magnetic influence and the ability to dissolve the barriers of more rigid and absolute natures, which is said elsewhere in the book. In addition to the metaphysical concepts described and said to affect you doubly so, considering the dual rulership here of the day and the period. A pursuit of high ideals is largely ascribed and realized by those following under the planet's rulership, hence a draw to a commitment to cause, I would say. Repelling authority, abhorring injustice, inequality, all those sorts of things. Essentially, those are the more baser, down in the dirt kinds of qualities that you're just not concerned with, all right? You find those to be an issue. So there's also a love of travel, change with associations with danger. Those are mentioned for the number 25, ostensibly baked in with risks in adventure. I would say by and large, this doesn't come up all that often. It's more of a Mercury type thing. So it's pretty interesting they throw that in there for you. Now, the numerology, I don't know if it has much to, if there's much bleed over with the astrology here, but like I said, they don't really bring up much numerology, so I'm kind of lost in the woods when it comes to anything to say about that. Not an astrologer by any stretch of the imagination either, but I've read enough of these to kind of remember some of the facets and stuff. But yeah, so there's your Neptune, and there's the dual rulership there. You get the bolstered energies. Cook in a little bit of that Mercury type stuff with the danger and sense of adventure. Pretty interesting, because like I said, that doesn't pop up for Neptune unless coupled with Mercury. So maybe that's cooked into it there for you. Who's to say? I don't know. Like I said, don't get much of the numerology around here. So that having been said, that's your numbers and planets. So if you took something of value from the reading itself, or my just talking about it a little bit extra there for you. That having been said, that's been your numbers and planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, sometimes we can make even more connections. We can find some things that marry up with the reading. Who's to say? Might find something else of value to take away with us. So let's just dive in, and then we can leave it there in the book when we're done. So let's get into it here. The seventh card of the major arcana is the Chariot, which shows a triumphant figure moving throughout the world, manifesting his physical presence in a dynamic way. The card may be interpreted to mean that no matter how narrow or precarious the correct path, one must continue on. And the good side of this card posits success, talent, and efficiency. The bad side suggests a dictatorial attitude and a poor sense of direction. Well, all right. This one was a copy-paste job here. They just took it from the last iteration of this particular card. Sometimes they'll button it with a little bit of a suggestion, put a little bit more context on things, or things to be advisable for, but not here for you today. Let's see if I can dive into it, make some more connections for you. The Chariot, for manifesting one's presence in a dynamic way and continuing on one path no matter the hardships, all right? Which, when coupled to something as grandiose as being committed to higher causes, maybe even more so if those chosen endeavors are solely driven for those things. It makes sense that such things may cause a person to doubt, all right? Because you're basically abandoning your life in pursuit of this cause. There's going to be some doubts baked into it, I would say. So promises for success, talents, and efficiency would be promising to such ends, all right? But negatives of a dictatorial attitude and a poor sense of direction are certainly warnings to beware of in either success or a seemingly failing pursuit of as much, all right? So I did think this spoke to you quite a bit there. Yeah, you're chasing down that higher sense of duty, your cause, and you know what? You never know what's going to happen in those cases. But the card promises success if you continue on that path. I would say by and large that probably rings true with just about anything. You follow it through long enough, you're apt to reach an end somewhere. But it's not always a positive outcome. Here I would say that's essentially what the card promises here. And if I would say that makes sense too, if you're chasing after a higher cause, there's probably some kind of positive outcome because it's just kind of baked into it, I would say. But that said, I think it spoke to you pretty aptly, considering all the facets that were conveyed in the breakdown. So let's move on to your advice. All right, some advice here. Be your own person, but consider the wishes of others and concentrate on improving yourself also. All right, don't be too needy of admiration, and respect beliefs different from your own. All right, pretty interesting, pretty concise and tight. It generally tends to be, but I think they impart a lot of value there. So that said, what did I have to say about what they had to say? All right, they said be your own person and consider the wishes of others. All right, common advice for this period for those dedicating themselves to causes. All right, you're more than your cause, though, so remember that about yourself. All right, and just don't discount your own value. All right, since Capricorn came up, people dedicate themselves to a cause just writ large above all else, and a lot of times they got the recommendation to tear down the walls that they put up between themselves and their personal life, because they basically leave themselves at work even though they come home. So yeah, there's just this aspect of kind of devaluing their own value, because they're so committed to what they're going after. So don't let that happen. All right, what else do we have here? There's an idea of giving gifts without considering whether they'd want same said gift. So don't just focus on your own desires, that fulfillment you get from giving as much, because that person may not want it. All right, even if it's an otherwise noble endeavor, or there was just nothing but positive feelings baked into it. I don't know, it might not turn out well. So yeah, consider other people's wishes. All right, what else did they have to say here? Improve yourself also. Your improvement extends to that which you would rather spend your time improving, I would argue. All right. So if you improve, hey, you know what? Something is going to be better about yourself, and then you can bring that to your worthy cause. All right. So, yeah, there's a little thing there for you. You get something out of it insofar as you get to apply it towards your cause. All right. Because you may not care about improving yourself. But hey, I'd say it's a noble endeavor then. So don't forget yourself. They also said, don't be needy of admiration. I would say, first and foremost, it's a bad look to be needy. Just consider the other folks that come to you needy. Now, imagine how that looks to others when it's you doing it. All right. But if it's warranted, it will come, I would say. All right. Whatever it is you're being needy about. Need versus want. And even if it doesn't come and you know in your heart of hearts your efforts had value, maybe ask why that isn't enough. All right. It should be. All right. Respect beliefs other than your own. You don't have to adopt them, but what can you learn from them, I would say. All right. Sometimes there's value in learning what not to do or what not to believe. All right. Either way, it's good to gain knowledge, one way or the other. But you wouldn't have known it wasn't for you if you hadn't learned it, or if you hadn't opened yourself up to it, or you wouldn't have necessarily seen what value was within it. We never know until we find out, right? So there you go. With your advice in the can there, let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get a meditation. Something to think about if you're like. By and large, the book is an advocate of self-awareness, so hopefully we can help promote as much with a little bit of a meditation. You get it. Let's get into it here. The brain is both a transmitter and a receptor. All right, interesting. You know what? Maybe I haven't gone over this one before. I feel like I've read this one before. Who's to say? But that said, doesn't mean it's less valuable. The brain is both a transmitter and a receptor. All right, there's your meditation. I'm not going to throw my interpretation on it for you. I'm probably affected it a little bit, making you think you got somebody's seconds. I don't know. But that being said, hey, there's something into it there for you. It's in your birthday. It's your meditation. So I'm not going to throw a spin on it. That said, your meditation in a can, as it were, let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. All right, let's hold up the objective mirror and see where you got the girth and we otherwise maybe a little more atrophied, if you like. That's right, your strengths, you're faithful, you're devotional, and you're giving. Interesting. I didn't see the devotional aspect of it, but it's there. It's there. But your weaknesses. Oh, what's that? Let's hold up that objective mirror, but flip it to the side that blows up your face. Maybe it shows off the things you're a little more superficially insecure about within the metaphor there. Your weaknesses. You're over-involved. You're rebellious. And you're unrealistic. Ooh, interesting. I don't know that I would have picked up on those as weaknesses. But hey, you know what? They're all in there, right? We've all got them. So that having been said, oftentimes I like to try and make a case that our weaknesses can also be strengths. There was one day a couple months back where impulsive came up as a strength. Very next day, it was a weakness. And so it was interesting to me that it would shift so dramatically considering the proximity of the days. But I think there's a case to be made. It just depends upon the situation and the individual. So your strengths, I also like to argue our strengths are going to help us overcome our weaknesses if there's something we think they need to be improved upon. You're faithful, devotional, and giving. I'd say you're faithful. Hey, you're going to be dedicated to that cause of improving upon your weaknesses. Devotional, it's kind of the same argument, I would say. There's a little bit of a dovetailing there. And giving, hey, you know what? If you're open to giving to yourself, you're going to do as much because you kind of have to give some time to yourself to improve upon your weaknesses. That said, your weaknesses, what's the case for those being strengths? Over-involved, hey, you know what? Sometimes if we're involved in something, that could be a bad thing because we're always into it, right? But the flip side of that, you know what? They're not going to doubt that you're not putting in the time, all right? If that ever comes into doubt, hey, you know what? There's no way that's that individual because they do so to a bad degree, all right? But I don't know. That doesn't necessarily make a case for it being a strength, unless But you know what? You're over involved. Keep going with things. I don't know. It's hard to see that as a weakness, but maybe it could be both, right? Situation dictates. That having been said, we've got rebellious in there too. You know what? When it came up, I saw it as a strength anyway. But maybe you're rebelling against the wrong things. A lot of times situations being what they are, hey, you know what? You get in with a bad elements or a bad element presents upon you, rebelling against it, you know what? In certain ways that they don't see as beneficial to their group, maybe that serves you and that they don't want you. Or they don't want to take you into the fold, if you like. I don't know, a little harebrained, but it could be a strength in that regard. Come off a little bit crazy or too rebellious. Say even the rebels don't want you in the fold. Maybe that's a strength. Unrealistic. Hey, I got that in spades today. So you know what? If you're ever trying to convince somebody of an argument that you don't think that. Just be unrealistic, all right? If you're trying to get someone to not believe your argument. There you go. I don't know. I didn't make the best case for my weaknesses being strengths today, but I think you get the idea, all right? But that having been said, I also like to say don't get rid of your weaknesses altogether because they're part of who you are, all right? They make you who you are, and you wouldn't be who you are without them. So, that having been said, your strengths and weaknesses in the can. That may have been my worst attempt at trying to do that for you. But hopefully you got some entertainment value out of it at the very least, all right? So let's move on to those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is focus on it from the perspective of trying to figure out our passions. That's right. Maybe we can drum up some inspiration to put our feet to the fire to start figuring that out for ourselves. And I say that because a lot of times I get out in the world and meet individuals, ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it, they don't. And so, I kind of think to myself, well, what's the disconnect? I think it's just simply that maybe they got out of school, had to get a job right away to make ends meet. They just didn't have an opportunity to find something that had something to do with what they like. And over time, sometimes people just get caught in a rut, advancing up that corporate ladder. The benefits outweigh the fact that, hey, at the very root of it, it's not something they like to do. And maybe they're just used to it. It's easy, it makes sense because I'm filling up my coffers. But you know what? I would say there's something missing, and that's taking fulfillment out of what we dedicate all our time to. So maybe this just gives you a little bit of an opportunity, if you find yourself on that same track, to start thinking about carving out some time, to putting some energy into figuring out what you like to do or what your passion is. And I would argue it's a difficult thing because, again, you got to dedicate some time to it, all right? And sometimes even if you do have a passion, maybe it's not financially viable, again, it's something you got to put time towards figuring out. So that's what I like to try to use this as a thing to do, because it's not just interesting to see who shares your birthday. Maybe we can take something from it. So let's dive into it, shall we? We have Pierre-Auguste Renoir, the French Impressionist painter. We also have George Frederick Handel, German-British master court composer, Baroque instrumental music to Oriento to opera. Not quite sure what that means, but that's what it says in the book here. We have Enrico Casario, an Italian operatic tenor superstar. We also have Meher Baba, Meher Baba, Indian mystic, self-professed avatar, and maintained a vow of silence and washed the feet of lepers and said, "Don't worry, be happy." Interesting. I didn't know that's where that came from. I just thought it was a song. All right, what else do we have here? Anthony Burgess, a British novelist of Clockwork Orange and also a composer. We also have Dame Mira Hess, a German-British pianist. We also have Marcel Pagnol, a French screenwriter and film director and responsible for Mannion of the Springs, and was also a producer. We have Adele Davis, nutritionist and responsible for Let's Eat Right to Keep Fit. All right. We also have George Harrison, the British singer, guitarist, and songwriter of the Beatles. And we also have John Foster Dulles, the Secretary of State. Herb Elliott, Australian Olympic gold medalist, and was gold medalist miler, and 3 world records, 17 sub-4 minute miles, it says. We also have Lee Evans, the U.S. Olympic gold medalist, 400-meter world record holder, Benedetto Croce, an Italian philosopher and an esthetician, aesthetician, anesthetician. I just never seen this word before. Aesthetician, somebody who studies beauty ostensibly. We have David Putnam, a British film director of Chariots of Fire, as well as The Killing Fields, and the head of Columbia Pictures. We also have Gert Frobe, a German film actor of Goldfinger fame. We also have Jim Backus, a film and TV actor, Thurston Howell III of Gilligan's Island, if you didn't know, and also the animated voice of Mr. Magoo, it says. And we also have Sally Jesse Raphael, the broadcaster and the talk show host. Tom Courtenay, a British film and stage, as well as TV actor. Bobby Riggs, an amateur champion tennis player, and set up the Battle of the Sexes matches. We also have Carl Eller, Minnesota Vikings All-Pro football defensive ends. All right, and that's been those born on this day. And I just realized as I was reading this, with the fitness book having been related, I totally bypassed reading your health. So let's dive into reading your health. I've never done that before. All right, your health. Here we go. Those born on February 25 lead very active, unconscious lives. Sleep is extremely important to them, and in particular, adequate dream time. Therefore, sleep disturbances must be eliminated as much as possible. And the consequences of an unconscious, unable to work through problems are irritability, grouchiness, and a low threshold for stress in waking life. February 25, people tend to either ignore food or revel in it. And so they will benefit from working out a systemic diet which ensures proper nutrition. Physical exercise is helpful in grounding those born on this day, and those activities with a spiritual component such as dancing, yoga, tai chi, or the martial arts are highly recommended. All right, now let's dive into the notes. I can't believe I skipped that. That's a first. That's a novel thing. That's a happy birthday now. Let's see. Let's get into your health. I said you're very active. You have very active, unconscious lives. Sleep is important for your dream time also. And I know they didn't mention that, but that often comes up for Neptune days. So I can't help but mention it for you there. Sounds funny, but this only comes up for Neptune days, like I said, if even then most times. So maybe take note to eliminate disturbances, lest you chance irritability and grouchiness, all right? At least in your waking life, apparently. And that's interesting here because it's the first time they've actually explained why it's important that you get your rest. It's come up other days, once in a blue moon, I feel like, but they never explained why. Here they did for you. So what else we have here? Recommendations of systemic diets for proper nutrition. An avoidance of dairy, however, is something I don't think that they brought up, but that comes up with the Pisces period in particular, because your body area is the lymphatic system and the toes and the feet. And I bring up the lymphatic system because, you take in too much dairy and you get some issues with the mucus there. You don't want that. So there's an idea with an astrology bend to it, maybe a dietary influence. And a lot of these days with the health that comes up, they don't recommend the diet or the specific foods there for you. When the rest of the book, they were doing that by and large. But here, since Capricorn, they kind of deviated from that a little bit. So I've been trying to make sure to mention such things when there seems to be a bit of an anomaly or discrepancy in that regard. So maybe avoid some dairy if you like. But they said you're pretty good about the nutrition. It just would have been nice if they brought in a few more food recommendations for you. But here nor there, they said you'll get your proper nutrition considering you like the food there. What else do I have to say? Moderate dairy again, lymphatic system, grounding exercises they mention here. No, not necessarily any quality to the exercise. That's something that they usually do, to say vigorous or moderate to light. You take a Mars day, for instance, with the aggressive god of power, or god of war, rather, energy. They often get an aggressive recommendation. The past period in Aquarius with Uranus in the mix, it tended to change all the Mars days to moderate to light, very interestingly. Here, though, no quality is mentioned, so I just have to assume a moderate to light exercise. Something grounding again, because Neptune folks got their heads in the clouds ostensibly after their higher ideals and get the sleep recommendations and everything. So yeah, probably moderate to light. So at least something of a non-aggressive form, I would say, since you don't have Mars or Uranus baked in there shaking things up. In any event, that's been your health. Like I said, total deviation there. I totally missed it. And I also mucked up a bunch of names there. So let's do some butchering on my end to make up for it. Not done in malice. It's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't necessarily work for me all the time with trying to sound out names. Not the best tool there. That having been said, having relayed your health here at the end, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading. Except to say your season is winter. Your sign, once again, is Pisces, of the Pisces I period specifically. And your quality and element is mutable water. And what does that mean? Well, that's a different video altogether. I'll leave it at the end there for you if you're interested. But this has been February 25th, the day of the higher cause. And let me tell you something, folks. I know you got seconds for the meditation. Perhaps. You may not have. It just kind of seems like maybe I read that before. But this was a day of many firsts. Let me tell you, many firsts. A lot of the things that came up in the book were not redundant at all. The gift-giving thing, that's a first. A lot of others too. There's probably too many for me to note. But that having been said, it was a day of first. And me mucking up the health, getting that all out of order, I've never done that. Interesting. But in any event, this has been February 25th, the day of the higher cause. All right. I know we didn't see any relation for like the bike horn or the shallow pork pie, but oftentimes we can't make a connotation with the reading for that. Sometimes yes, most times no. That having been said, this has been The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up a copy, diving in further, getting through it faster than I could for you. You know what? It makes an excellent coffee table book. If you're apt to have company over, this thing's going to get the conversation started. For better or for worse, but it's going to get the conversation flowing for sure. And I have the affiliate link right above, a personal message I like to put together for you birthday boys and girls, ladies and gents, so look out for that if you're interested. But that said, the book having been relayed, not altogether all too important here in the scheme of things. And what are the scheme of things, everything else being considered, all things being equal? Wishing you a happy birthday. So if you stuck around to the very end, hey, I just want to say thank you for the pleasure of your time. It was a privilege to share your birthday with you. And today of firsts, let me tell you, that's for sure. That having been said, for everybody else that jumped in here to celebrate, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves too. Took something of value. For my return viewers, hopefully you got a rise out of me getting all out of order, getting some of the copy mucked up there. It's always fun to be learning new things, all right, even though I've done this many times before. That said, that's what happens with these one-shot, one-takes sometimes. We get it in there, though, all right, and we celebrate that birthday. That's why we're here. That said, lest I forget, before I take us out, your daily numbers, all right? Get out there, let the universe show you it's with you on your path, and if you see, taste, touch, smell, intuit, even just a little bit of the magic that I was bringing up there for you, hey, you know what? I think you understand why I brought it up for you, all right? We should be doing stuff that's fun on our birthday, all right? Not just chasing after our passions, but that's an important one too. So if I can wish anything for you on your birthday, in addition to all of that, hey, you know what? That's that you're chasing after a passion and finding something fulfilling. So I hope you took some inspiration from those born on this day, or at the very least, hey, it's interesting I share my birthday with Renoir and the guy who voiced Mr. Magoo. That's right. So anyway, hey, once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourselves.